Hello and welcome to the Film Pulse podcast. This is episode number 366. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today we got Kevin Rakestraw. Hey, Kevin.
Hey.
This week on the show we'll be taking a look at the new Netflix comedy, The Lovebirds. So hopefully feeling better by checking out a comedy. Lighten the mood a bit in these dark times. We'll also be going over some of what we've been watching on the watch list and new releases on VOD and Blu-ray. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Please remember to review us on iTunes if you get a moment. That'd be super helpful. Just two bits of housekeeping to go over today. There will not be a Ryan Watches a Movie. No Ryan Watches a Movie this week. This was actually my fault this week. I couldn't get it together. I couldn't get it together to record. So that's my bad. But we should be back next week with a brand new one. Honestly, I'm not going to get into it, but something happened with Ryan too, so I don't think we would have been recording anyway.
No,
it wasn't going to happen anyway.
Yeah, it compiled on itself. Yeah,
yeah. Like right after I said I didn't think I was going to be able to make it. Something
there was
happened.
An update.
Yeah, something happened with Ryan,
and it worked out for the best, I think.
Yeah, agreed. There will be a new Saved by the 90s dropping this week. I think I'm going to drop it on Tuesday. As I mentioned last week, we talk about TV adaptations, including the Casper movie, the Flintstones, Mission Impossible, and Tales from the Dark Side, the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also talk about the Flipper TV series from the 90s, starring Jessica Alba. So check that out. I think we can jump into our review. This week we're talking about The Lovebirds. This is directed by Michael Showalter.
I did not know that, by the way.
Yeah. Directed by Michael Showalter. I have a synopsis here. A couple experiences a defining moment in their relationship when they are unintentionally embroiled in a murder mystery. This stars Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani. I guess I'll start it off this week. So this was a movie that was going to be in theaters, was supposed to be in theaters like several months ago. And because of COVID, it got bumped. And then Netflix picked it up and put it out this weekend. I think it was supposed to be in theaters April 3rd, actually, according to this. So it got dropped on Netflix. And I got to say, like, Netflix seems like this is where this movie should have lived from the beginning, because to me, this was a very standard Netflix comedy where it's light, it is mildly amusing, but there is like absolutely no staying power on this movie, at least for me whatsoever. Like it came into my life, it left, and by the end of the year, I'll forget every single thing about this movie.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, it found its home. Netflix it's like a perfect Netflix movie. And the weird thing, though, to me is I don't know how. I'm just as surprised in what I'm about to say. Because for some reason, at some point, I saw the movie Date Night with Steve Carell and Tina Fey. I don't know if you remember that movie.
I do, yeah.
Kind of the same thing.
I saw it in the theater, actually. I remember.
Oh, okay. This movie is that movie. Yeah. It's like the same fucking movie. It's pretty much like the same thing, beat for beat, just about, it feels like. Even with the whole, like they break into an apartment that they think is empty and what? Nope. It's not empty. There's people in there.
People there. It wasn't. I mean, I'm not gonna say that the movie was all bad. I think that Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani are two very, very funny people, and I really liked their dynamic. I thought that they played off of each other very well, and I bought them as a couple, and I really enjoyed their banter. And so I think that, like, casting wise, I think this was a good choice. It's just that the overall narrative here, for me, it was just really uneventful. Like, I felt like I've just seen so much of this before that nothing was really compelling about it to me.
Well, and that's the difficult thing with this storyline. I mean, going into it that they're going to be fine, obviously. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to take a like tragic turn or anything. So you have an idea from the outset of how this is going to play out, all right? So really, the only thing you're looking for is some comedy. From point A to point B. Hopefully, there's a decent amount of comedy in between those 2 points, right? And there just isn't for me. Like, it's not that it's not funny, but I don't know if there was ever truly like a hilarious sequence in this movie. It's just a bunch of stuff that occasionally made me chortle, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And then I completely forgot within like 5-10 minutes.
Same. Yeah. I mean, there weren't any like super memorable lines or set pieces or anything like that. It was all, to me, it was all like mildly amusing. And like the one scene that I thought was really funny, unfortunately, was in the trailer, and that was the scene when they get like kidnapped by the couple, and he has to choose between the bacon grease or what's behind the door. And unfortunately, yeah, that's in the trailer. So
yeah. And even like I said, where exactly where this is going to end up, but like there was not even like a hint of a surprise or like trying to do anything interesting whatsoever with that storyline. Like, they're just like, okay, this is our storyline. We'll take a step down the line. We'll just get to the end of this. It's like there was like nothing put into it at all.
I also liked the eyes wide shut scene. Like, that was funny, but again, a big portion of that was spoiled in the trailer. So
yeah, and it feels really, really lazy too, in the sense that you have that build up to them getting to that eyes wide shut scene, which that whole set piece is very, very short. And then, like, after that, it's just the cops, just being like, hey, we just need your help. And it's just like, what? None of this feels realistic in any way, shape, or form. And not that it needs to be realistic. Obviously, it's a comedy. But it's just so, like, it's just so incredibly lazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, it feels so, like, paint by numbers. We've seen this just so many times before. It's all very telegraphed. And I mean, even when you look at sort of the overarching themes here with the two of them, they're broken up at the beginning of the movie. Like, they're not together, and we know where this is going to go. This traumatic series of events is going to bring them closer together and make them realize that they still love each other and all of that. So you knew everything that was going to happen. It was just so utterly predictable. And I think as a result, even though you have two strong leads in this who are inherently funny people, it doesn't necessarily save this from feeling just sort of mediocre.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like they were given enough room to really, kind of do anything comedy-wise. They just felt really, like, boxed in by the storyline that no one cares about. We just want comedy.
Yeah.
We don't give a shit. We know what's gonna happen. Either, like, as soon as it, the cards are laid out on the table, you're like, I know exactly how this ends. So let's just do some good comedy, please.
I did like the scene when they were talking about the Bad Boys song, and Kumail Nanjiani goes, "We're the bad boys. What are we gonna do?"
I think my favorite part is the thing that I found the funniest was his the milkshake container, because I've often wondered that too.
Oh yeah.
Like, why do they always make more milkshake? Like, I just don't understand. How is there not just like a standard size milkshake container maker, and that's what you get? Like, how do they not match up to the glass that's served?
Yep.
It seems unnecessary.
Yeah, so It's like it's on Netflix. Everybody already has Netflix. It's
You're not going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere. There's not much else to watch. So maybe give it a look. Just don't expect more than a standard Netflix comedy. I maybe I made the mistake of having sort of a little bit of elevated expectations for this, just because I knew that it was originally going to be a theatrical release and then put on Netflix. So I kind of thought maybe it'll be a little bit different, but no.
Well, and that's what I thought too. Is that coupled with Issa Rae and Nanjiani, right? Like, oh, this is going to be good. And then, like, right before I hit play on this thing, I realized that Michael Showalter's the director. I'm like, oh, this might actually be something. But it's not. It's not.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not.
Not at all. Just a massive bummer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's give the Lovebirds a score. What are you gonna give it out of 10?
Really a 4.5.
Yeah, it's kind of right around where I'm sitting. Right around a 5 for this. Just
it's one of those things where I think it's like an hour and a half long, right? So it's brisk. Got that brisk runtime. I'll say that I didn't hate my hour and a half with it, but I'm also not going to remember that hour and a half.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean it's already leaving my mind at this point.
I pretty much just remember the milkshake thing. That's what I got.
And the only reason I remember the Bad Boys thing is because I wrote it down because I thought it was funny. So there we go. That's the Lovebirds, and that is on Netflix now, so you can check that out. Let's move on and talk about someone we're watching. Kevin, I think it's your turn this week.
That might have been the shortest.
I know. I mean, I have so little to say about it.
I know. There's nothing to it. Like there's no cinematography. There's not a whole lot of comedy.
The only
like, oh, this joke was great.
The only thing that I really wanted to highlight was the rapport that Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani had, and I did that right at the beginning. So that's it. That's all I got.
The only thing I wanted to point out is I was like, this is pretty much that movie Date Night.
It is. I didn't even. With Steve I really didn't even think about that, but it is very much like Date Night.
It was just funny because I was like, at the beginning stages of the movie, I'm like, hey, this is kind of like Date Night, and then they break into that apartment or whatever, and I'm like,
this is Date Night.
A lot like Date Night.
This is Date Night. Wait a minute, did they remake Date Night?
Did they just reboot it with different people? Oh man. Well, I didn't watch a whole lot, and actually, one that I kind of forgot to talk about with you is Sucker Punch. Did I talk about Sucker Punch with you?
No.
I can't remember. Yeah.
No, I definitely would have remembered if you mentioned Sucker Punch. So. Oh my God. I have to know what you thought of Sucker Punch.
I didn't really like it. I mean, I don't think
shocked.
That's a huge surprise. I think there's enough here for me to like it, but this movie does, a number one thing that I can't stand, which is like one musical track to another musical track to another musical track, where it feels like it just plays out like a music video. And the music that is in this movie is so bad. It's all these terrible covers.
I remember
like, oh boy.
I don't remember any. Ooh. The only one that I remember is I think they did a cover of Where's My Mind.
Yes, and it's terrible. And they do a cover of Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit, which is also really, really terrible. Because they're all those like emo, brand of covers where they slow it down a little bit, and it's terrible. And again, it hops from one terrible cover to another terrible cover to another terrible cover, and it never gives me time to just be in a movie, really. Like there's always this terrible soundtrack playing, except for when they do a Bjork song, which it was the only song that worked, and it wasn't a cover. It was like, yeah, just use the original song or find something better, please. But I mean, it did have some interesting stuff in there. It's just I couldn't get past that. I can't get past that. I hate it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It always ruins the movie for me. It also didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Gotta be honest.
Yeah, I remember not liking it. I remember finding some of the visuals to be striking, but that's pretty much the extent of my thoughts on it. I remember not being a big fan of it. There's a lot of people that really love Sucker Punch. I think it's sort of a cult movie in a lot of ways. And
I can kind of see that. Like, I can see it. To me, it's not terrible.
Years ago, there was, I can't even remember who did it, and I apologize, but there was a video essay released on Sucker Punch, and it was this really deep dive into all of the hidden meanings and all of this stuff and all of this really deep interpretation of Sucker Punch, and it was really kind of fascinating, and I don't for a minute believe that was Zack Snyder's intention, but that interpretation was like just really interesting.
Yeah, it's always fun when people do that because 90% of it is just complete projection, which I
think is great. If somebody takes away a really deeper meaning in a movie than what was originally intended, I think that's a bonus.
No, yeah, because that's going to happen in everything.
Yeah. I saw a lot of stuff this week, actually.
Oh boy!
I know that I was like on a dry spell there for a while, but I really kind of kicked things into high gear this week. I started it off with a movie called Inheritance. This is directed by Vaughn Stein. I have a review for this up on the site. This came out this week on VOD. It stars Lily Collins and Simon Pegg, and Simon Pegg in a dramatic role. If you look at the Letterboxd listing, you can see Simon Pegg sitting there with this really awful wig that he wears in the movie. So this is essentially, it's about this really wealthy family, and the father, the patriarch of the family, dies, and he leaves his son a whole bunch of money, like millions of dollars. He leaves his wife a whole bunch of money, millions of dollars, but he only leaves his daughter $1 million. And they think that's odd, but it turns out that she's like the Manhattan district attorney, which, by the way, she's like 27 years old and you're the Manhattan district attorney. Like, I'm not believing that for a second, but so he leaves her $1 million, but he also leaves her this, like, a key to this bunker that's on their vacation property. And when she goes down into the bunker, she discovers Simon Pegg in there, and he's been trapped in there for 30 years. So the movie is about Lily Collins figuring out who this man is, why her dad trapped him down there for 30 years, and what to do with him. Like, does she let him go? Does she call the cops? Does she just leave him there? And so it has somewhat of an intriguing premise, but it doesn't go anywhere with it. And by the end, it just, like, the final act completely ruins the movie. It turns into this really standard thriller, and it sort of undermines everything about the movie up to that point. It was up to that final act. It felt like almost this critique on wealth, and you have this family who their dad was like a big finance guy, and then she's this powerful DA, and then her brother is a congressman. So they have this like sort of this untouchable quality to them where they can get away with anything because they have so much money and they can just pay off whoever, and they have all these connections and stuff. And the final act just undoes all of that and turns into this like bog standard thriller. And none of it really works. To me, it all felt like a bad version of Succession, the HBO show, and it was just really disappointing. Simon Pegg in a dramatic role didn't really work. You know, sometimes it works for comedic actors who make the switch over to drama, and in this case, it did not work in his favor.
Yeah, like I pulled up Letterboxd because I was intrigued by this wig thing, and just seeing him right here, I'm just like, I have a feeling that doesn't work.
Nope,
it doesn't look like it's gonna work.
I will say that Lily Collins is great in it. She does a really great job, but that's really the only positive thing I can say about it.
Wow.
And obviously the poster is completely biting off of 13 Cloverfield Lane.
It sure is. Wow. How about that? The only other thing I saw is Take Me Somewhere Nice, which is currently on Mubi right now. It's on Mubi. This is directed by Ina Sendijarich, and it's about it's like a road trip movie in a way, coming of age movie too as well, with a couple of those genres mixed up in there. And Alma she lives in the Netherlands. Her father's in the hospital back in the home country of Bosnia. He's dying, so she decides to go to Bosnia and to visit him, and she's going to stay with her cousin while she's there. So it's kind of this, going back to your home country. She's on the verge, you know how they always say, on the verge of adulthood. And it's this summer. She's going to take this, she's got to figure out a way to get to the hospital, because as soon as she gets to Bosnia, her cousin just has no interest in her whatsoever, and just, cold reception, doesn't want to do anything, doesn't want to be around her. So she's just kind of left stranded in Bosnia, and she's got to figure it out. And of course, most of the things don't go as planned, as they normally don't in these movies. For the most part, it's pretty standard. If you've seen enough of these movies, and especially like the Euro art house take on them, there's not a whole lot going on. The vibe of it feels very similar to like any of the European movies, where there's not a whole lot of dialogue. There's some quirks in there, little just slight touches of comedy, very, very subtle, very dry, that type of thing. The only thing that I will say is this is also, I should mention, this is a debut, but the work that the director does along with their cinematographer, Emo Weemhoff, throughout the entirety of this movie, every shot, pretty much every frame, every scene, sequence, what have you, is visually interesting, very meticulous, very interesting shot choices, the way that they stage them, the way that they block them and everything. And just on that side of things, visually speaking, it's definitely something that holds your interest for the entire runtime, which in turn makes up for the fact that the storyline of this, the narrative portions of it are a little bit well worn and not entirely interesting on their own. But for the most part, the visuals make up for it enough that I definitely will check out more of what she has to come in the future. And I will tell you this too, because the majority of the movie takes place in Bosnia. Bosnia, it got some interesting things going on lighting wise, and a lot of their hotels and whatnot. Got a lot of strange, like strobing, changing light, like mood lighting type thing. Like purples and greens. It's very bizarre.
That is Take Me Somewhere Nice. I did get an email. I don't know if you saw this from Mubi, that they now have their full library open, and if you're a member, you have access to this like massive library of like previously released titles on Mubi.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to mention that and I completely forgot. And they have a lot of stuff on there too.
Yeah,
it's not just like, because they originally had their section that you could rent from, but a lot of the stuff that showed up in the 30 days and then it goes wouldn't make it to the library. Like the library was just like this certain selection, and it just for the most part stayed the same. But the library that they have now, with it being free, a lot of the stuff that got programmed through there is staying in, and you can watch it.
Yeah, I quickly browsed through it the other day, and It's a pretty impressive lineup. So if you have Mubi, check it out. And I think that they do offer like a trial. So be sure to check out Mubi if you get a chance. If you're looking for some interesting things that you maybe never heard of.
And did you happen to see that they have a trauma section? Because apparently some of the trauma movies got restored.
I did not see that. I know that Trauma has a YouTube channel that they released like tons and tons of their movies. I think almost the whole Trauma catalog is on YouTube, and like some of them you can rent, some of them you have to rent, but there's a lot of ones that are free.
Huh.
Okay, I saw Body Cam. This is a movie that came out this week. It stars Nat Wolff and Mary J. Blige. It's a procedural, but the twist here is that there's a little bit of horror. There's a little bit of supernatural horror involved in it. You have this plot where there's a creature, there's someone killing cops, and Mary J. Blige is trying to figure out who's killing these cops, like brutally murdering them, like ripping them open, spilling out their guts and all that stuff. The movie's not good. It is quite bad. Perhaps the funniest thing about this movie is the fact that in the synopsis, they spoil the ending of the movie. Which is, I don't understand why they would choose that synopsis, but it pretty much just spoils the whole reason for the movie existing. And I guess I'm not surprised. It's not scary. It's very predictable. I can't recommend Body Cam. So I would skip that one, please. Skip over that one. Another one that I could say pass on is Fantasy Island. I finally saw the Blumhouse version of Fantasy Island directed by Jeff Wadlow. Oh boy, is this one bad. Oh my God. I didn't have high expectations for this. I'm glad I didn't go to the theater, waste my money to see this, because it is so awful. Just so awful. The funny thing about it is, the premise is you get this group of people and they're seemingly random, but it's very obvious that there is some kind of connection. There's something going on here. These people aren't random. And they go to this island where one of their biggest fantasy, it comes true. So you go to the island and like one guy, his fantasy was to be a soldier, and so it's deeper than that, because what it does is it takes the fantasy that they say and sort of goes beneath the surface and looks at like why the person wants that fantasy. So for the guy who wanted to be a soldier, it was because his dad was a soldier and he wanted to reconnect with his dad and he wanted to make his dad proud. So in his fantasy, he ends up meeting up with his dad and his dad's platoon. And as you might expect, things take a sinister turn when all their fantasies are sort of twisted a little bit and turn out to be very dangerous. But then things get a little more complex when you find out that like some of these people are in other people's fantasies. So like it was like part of my fantasy that you were here and had this fantasy where this thing happened to you. So it's like there's these like supposed layers to it, and then like, but it gets so ridiculous because you're just like, is it his fantasy? Is it his fantasy? Whose fantasy is this? Are we in this other fantasy now? And when you find out like how they're all connected, it's just really dumb. And I can't definitely don't recommend Fantasy Island. It just doesn't work on any level. I saw two Coogans, did a Coogan double bill this week.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I started with The Trip to Greece, which is the fourth and supposedly final entry in the Trip series. I hope that's not the case. Yeah, I hope that's really not the case. I have a feeling that they didn't intend on doing four of these to begin
No.
with. It's directed by Michael Winterbottom, who did all the other ones. And I got to say, like, if you're not a fan of the Trip series, it's more of the same. It's Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon. They go to Greece. They're retracing the steps of Ulysses. And if you didn't like any of the previous ones, you're probably not going to like this one. But as someone who really enjoys the Trip movies, just for how I don't know how to explain it. They're funny, yes, but there's like this sort of level of comfort I get from them. Like it's just like it's like a warm blanket, you know? There's just something about them that I really enjoy. And if you've watched all the other ones, you'll know that, like, as each one is released, they get progressively more somber. And this one is by far, like, the most dramatic of them all. And I think that that's actually kind of a big theme in this, is the juxtaposition between tragedy and comedy and all of that stuff. And I think that this is probably my favorite of them all so far, just for the final act and how they end it. And it was surprisingly sad. So I can definitely recommend The Trip to Greece. The other movie that I watched with Steve Coogan was Greed. And this came out, I think it came out last year, but I'm actually not really sure when this was released. It's also directed by Michael Winterbottom, and Steve Coogan plays this retail billionaire, and it's about how he's having his 60th birthday. It also takes place in Greece. And on top of that, there is one of the characters from this movie is in The Trip to Greece also. And there's this kind of connection with both movies. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, a little multitasking on Greece.
Yeah. So there's this, like, sort of underlying look at the refugee crisis in Greece and what's happening there. And this movie looks at that along with the retail clothing industry and how basically horrible the retail clothing industry is, and how they, use sweatshop labor and all of that stuff. It's funny. I enjoyed it. It's heavier than, The Trip to Greece, but it's still pretty enjoyable. And it has a crazy ending too. I'm not going to give it away, but it has a really unexpected ending.
I think I do remember seeing a trailer for that and being like, you know what, that doesn't look too bad. But I've always been intrigued by Michael Winterbottom as a director. He just doesn't make sense to me. He's directed it seems like he directs like 20 movies a year.
Yeah. He's a busy guy.
But you don't find out about him until like 4 years after the fact.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, wait, he did 20 movies last year.
He's a very busy guy.
And also most of them are not talked about, but some of them are. He's such an odd career to me.
I like his stuff. Like, almost everything he does, I enjoy.
I don't think I've ever loved anything he's done. I've liked things that he's done, but not enough that he stands out to me. That's another thing, is like, he's not a director that I remember until someone brings him up, and I'm like, oh yeah, that guy. He's directed 742 movies.
Yeah. He doesn't really have, like, a distinct style or anything. Like, if you see one of his movies, there's like certain things about it, like if Steve Coogan's in it, and it's like a comedy that has these sort of dramatic elements, you could probably say as a safe bet that it's a Winterbottom. But other than that, it's kind of tough to pin him down. I'm working my way through the Chattanooga Film Festival releases this weekend also. Now, if you're not familiar, the Chattanooga Film Festival has gone virtual this year. So if you're listening to this, and today is the last day of the Chattanooga Film Festival. So if you're interested, you can still buy a $10 pass and get full access to all of the movies That includes the features and the shorts that are available, and there's some really good stuff. I still have a bunch that I want to watch and try to squeeze in this weekend, so I'll mention those next week. But so far, I watched The Vice Guide to Bigfoot, which is directed by Zach Lampew. What The Vice Guide to Bigfoot is it's a mockumentary about this journalist for Vice who is sent to Georgia to follow this Bigfoot hunter around, and some pretty crazy things happen along the way. And it's fine. There's some interesting things that happen in it. It's funny that that it's sort of lampooning Vice, but obviously Vice signed off on it because it uses actual like Vice, like Brian Emond is an actual Vice correspondent, and so like they rip Vice apart, and it's just funny because they obviously signed off on it. It's reminiscent of something like Willow Creek, which I remember that you and I were not huge fans of. It's not so much found footage as it is mockumentary, though, and there's some other things that happen that make it more entertaining and complicate things a bit. So I would maybe give it a light recommend, especially if you enjoy making fun of Vice and how freaking ridiculous they are. Because there's some really funny stuff. There's like a scene where he goes to Williamsburg and interviews someone who makes artisanal antibiotics in Williamsburg. It's just
who did was that documentary now? Did they do one where they spoofed Vice?
Probably. I think they did, actually.
And it was great because it was like the Mexican drug cartels or something. And they kept sending Vice people down. They kept getting murdered.
Oh, yeah.
And sent back.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Vice is so ridiculous.
They are.
The other one I saw was called Fulci for Fake, which is a documentary about the director Lucio Fulci, who directed such films as Zombie and The Beyond and New York Ripper. Pretty into this director. And this is kind of a little bit of an experimental documentary where the director hires an actor to portray Fulci, but what he does is he has this actor go around and interview all of the people from Fulci's life, like coworkers and family members and such, in order to portray him in these like reenactments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really get why they did it. Like, I'm just not sure what the point of it was, honestly. Like, they're trying to like deep dive into like Fulci's life and his psyche and understand him and his decisions as a director and stuff like that. But I just don't understand why they did it. Like what was the point? Because to me, a lot of it felt like I don't understand. It didn't add anything really to the documentary, and there were some like anecdotes that friends and family would tell that were like pretty boring, and so it's not a documentary that necessarily worked for me. And I'm a pretty big fan of Fulci, but like super fans might gain something out of hearing these stories about him, but for me it was like I found it to be pretty dull, so I can't really recommend Fulci for Fake. I just wasn't that into it, and the experimental aspect of it didn't really work for me either, unfortunately. Okay, let's talk about what we have on VOD this week. On the 26th, we have Funny Pains, which is a comedy about stand-up comedians. We got We got Girls Just Want to Have Blood.
I gotcha.
Yeah, Girls Just Want to Have Blood. Being a Teenager Sucks. It's a vampire movie.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
We got Celebrity Crush. Some kind of horror movie. Judging by the poster, it looks like they're trying to looks like a Joker ripoff or something.
Cool.
Screened Out, which is a documentary. And then on the 29th, we have Papicha. That is a virtual theatrical release. We got For We Are Many, which is looks to be a horror movie. We got Stage, The Culinary Internship. That is a virtual theatrical release too, and that is obviously a documentary. End of Sentence, starring John Hawkes and Logan Lerman. Sometimes a wrong turn can get you to the right place.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, enjoy that. We got The Vast of Night. That's going to be on Amazon.
Yes.
And Debt Collectors, which is Scott Adkins action movie.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I feel like we got a couple. Got a couple of these Scott Adkins movies coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
On Blu-ray this week, we have The Deer Hunter in 4K.
Oh boy.
From 1978. Classic.
I'm kind of surprised that's not already in 4K.
Yeah, Shout Factory is putting that out. Collector's edition.
Mm-hmm.
Escape from LA from 1996 is getting a new Blu-ray release. Is that a Shout Factory? Yep, that is a Shout Factory Collector's edition. I remember really loving Escape from LA. I remember I saw Escape from LA before Escape from New York. And then when I saw Escape from New York, years later, I was just like, this is the same movie. It's the same exact movie. It's when you see them, they're like, this is pretty much the same thing. I remember the surfing scene in Escape from LA, and just it looks so bad.
Yeah, but did New York have a surfing scene?
No, I don't think so.
So, okay, not the same movie. Jesus.
Yeah, good point. We got The Invisible Man coming out in 4K as well. That's going to be on regular Blu-ray too. If you haven't checked that out, I would highly recommend it. Zombie is getting a 4K release. That's the Lucio Fulci movie from 1979. This is, we got a box set from Arrow. This is the films of Shinya Tsukamoto. This is the guy who did the Tetsuo the Iron Man series and Tokyo Fist, Bullet Ballet. This is 8 movies, I think. Something like that.
Damn.
Yeah, this is a big box set. 754 minutes. Maniac from 1980 is getting a 4K release. That was just on Last Drive-In a couple weeks ago. Very disturbing movie. We got Before the Devil Knows You're Dead from 2007. That's going to be on Shout Factory as well. I remember being a big fan of that one. Blood Tide from 1982. That's going to come out on Arrow. Breeders from 1997. Better Off Dead from 1985. That's the John Cusack movie. Tommy Boy from 1995 is getting some kind of steelbook edition.
Hell yeah.
I should revisit that. Love that movie. Angela's Ashes from 1999 is getting a new Blu-ray release. That's pretty much it. What about Criterion's?
This is a big week for Criterion. They got 3 things coming out here. First of which is Scorsese shorts. About 5 Scorsese shorts from the 60s and 70s getting its own release with a bunch of conversations and discussions and whatnot. You got Cassavetes' Husbands from 1970, which I'm really looking forward to. And then the one that surprised me when they announced it, and it still doesn't really make sense to me, is Paul Dano's debut, Wildlife. It's just weird to me that Paul Dano's movie that I don't really remember anyone talking about just popping up on Criterion.
It is a little strange, yeah. I mean, I do remember some people giving it praise, but nothing major.
No, and it just looks milquetoast beyond all belief. Just no thank you. No interest.
Yeah. All right, I think that's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. You can send us your questions and topics to podcast@filmpulse.net. You can follow us on Twitter @filmpulsenet and @filmpulsekevin. And if you have a minute, consider reviewing us on your podcast platform of choice. For Kevin Rakestraw, my name's Adam Patterson. We'll see you next week.